Well, it's been a while, but Bobby the Brains McMahon joins us once again. And Bobby, yes, Euro qualifying is upon us. 24 teams qualify this time around, and even third-place teams can qualify from their groups. What's your thought on the whole so-called revamping of this year's European Championship?
The conventional wisdom and what we read is it's come under a lot of criticism. And the basis of the criticism seems to be that it's going to make it easier for the big countries to qualify, meaning that they can miss out on the first place, they'll get second place, still go through automatically, may even go through as a third place through a playoff. But the reality, James, is if you go back through the last 5 European Championships, 12 of the countries have occupied 60% of the spots anyway, so it's not a case of making it easier for these big countries. It's been easy for these big countries anyway. It's a format of the groups of 6 and 7 teams that make it easier, not the fact that they're allowing 24 through necessarily. So you see it actually replicating itself in the World Cup as well. It's relatively small countries are occupying the places again and again and again. And I actually think it's a good thing for UEFA to expand it to 24 teams, because it is going to give us a little bit, it's got the ability to freshen up the tournament. And once you get into the group stages, I think you've got more chances of surprises. And that's really what keeps these tournaments relevant and keep us excited about them. The fact that from now and again we do get surprises and we do get shocks.
Well, speaking of surprises, Portugal will lose to Albania. Now, Paulo Bento was fired on Thursday as head coach. Bobby, what is going on right now with this Portuguese national team? It's crazy.
Well, I think we've got to put this in context as well, because let's face it, Portugal have got a history of struggling through the qualifiers. We thought that would mean that when they got the World Cup I had thought when they got the World Cup in 2014, that's when they would start playing, but they didn't actually manage to do that either. So it's a disappointing. They haven't been able to offset the disappointment or the relative disappointment of a poor qualifying campaign with relative success at the major tournament. So I think that's probably built up to the point where they lose at home to Albania, and really there's no option but for Bento to go. As far as Portugal is concerned, I think they will still get through. They just are going to have they're going to make heavy weather of it, as they've done in the past.
Now, we saw a so-called new-look Spain win. Are they still a contending force, do you think, Bobby?
Good question, James, and I think one we've got to think we've got to put into that kind of 2-year context, because it's not exactly what we're getting now. It's where they'll be in 2 years' time when they get to the European Championship finals in France that we've got to anticipate. And I think we're seeing a certain unique set of circumstances here in Europe as well, because I'm hard pushed to think of a situation where so many teams, so many countries are actually going through a transition period. England, we saw with a much more youthful looking team this week against Switzerland. You look at Spain, we're talking about just now. You look at Italy as well. That's very much a team in transition, a country in transition. And then you add Germany to that list as well. The world champions were not exactly used to a world championship side having the sort of turnover that they're seeing. But Philipp Lahm's gone, Mertesacker's gone, a couple other important players that look like they're going to be on their way out as well. So you've got world champions transitioning as well. So I think the one thing that really is a positive as far as Spain is concerned is the success they've had at the age group level over the last number of years. So that tells us the production line is good, and if you're producing good players, then there's a good chance you're going to be back up there challenging with the big boys and challenging for the trophy maybe in a couple of years' time.
Now, you mentioned England, who are, I guess, diamonds in the rough. Bad pun, I apologise. But against Switzerland, Hodgson's boys looked somewhat adequate, didn't they?
Oh, so we're going from the golden generation to the diamond generation now?
Yes,
that's what we're
absolutely.
Doing here? I thought it was a kind of, there was positives in the performance from England. I thought defensively they were much better. They looked much better organised. But the game itself, it was still a counter-attack goal that got them the go-ahead goal. It came after Switzerland had probably enjoyed their best period of the game, and it looked like if anybody was going to score, it was going to be Switzerland. But as I say, you've got to look at the positives here, and the bottom line to this one is England have gone to Switzerland, which are the biggest opponent in this group, and they've won away from home. So you can't argue with the result. The result was a fantastic result for England, and there was positives in the performance.
Now, domestically, Canada finally won again, 3-1 against a very poor Jamaica side. Do you think Benito Flores' patience is finally paying off?
I don't think you can say it's a full vindication, but I think it's only fair to allow him time to settle in. He's looked at a lot of players. It was a good result, as you point out. It wasn't a great performance in Jamaica, particularly the goalkeeping was absolutely brutal. But with Canada, as it's been for so many years, it's about taking small steps and trying to build on some relative successes. And I think really that staging point is going to be the next Gold Cup. That's a staging post for Canada, and we're going to get a far better idea once the Gold Cup comes and goes whether Canada really is in a position to challenge to get into the last six. Because let's face it, I think there's been a big assumption over the years that Canada sort of should be in that last six, should be in that hex when it comes to World Cup qualifying. But the reality is their performances have got poorer and poorer over the years. So that is really stage one, is getting back to the six, let alone competing for one of the top three places.
As for TFC, last we spoke, Bobby, things were good. Now they're not so good. What's happening? Is it more of the same or just a little bump in the road for TFC?
I think they're not as bad as the results are showing, but they're also dealing with one of the situations we talked about back at the beginning of the season. They've spent an awful lot of money on relatively few players. And the thing about MLS is you go back and track the teams that have had success in MLS over the years, and I think the success tends to come to the teams, and I know this is going to sound a little bit contradictory, but it comes to the teams who have got the strongest, weakest links. So the teams that have actually looked at the lower end of their squad and strengthened that tend to be the teams that have success, rather than the teams that have front-ended it and put a lot of money into stars. And I think that's the kind of situation Toronto FC find themselves in at the moment. They've got an unbalanced squad, and when some of the top players go off either through injury or off form, there's really very little to fall back on. So I think it's something they've just got to work their way back into. And I still think that when we really get into this, as we now approach the late season playoff race, they're still a team to be contended with.
Bobby, thanks, mate. Let's chat again on Friday, shall we? See you then.
Thanks very much, James.